Hey everybody, welcome to another installment of Gas Powered Thoughts. Today I want to introduce you to the new HWC T700 conversion for the RC format motor. This is a little unique for HWC, and it's the first conversion they've done that uses the RC format of the Zenoah motor. If you're not familiar with what that means, you'll see more about that in a minute. The conversion uses a Trex 700 Nitro. You'll need the main rotor head and associated bearing blocks, the entire tail rotor, and the landing gear. Virtually everything else is provided in the conversion, including this nicely painted canopy. So let's get into some more detail about what you get with this conversion. Let's open up the conversion and see what's in it. If you take a look at the main components, you'll see all the frame pieces, a fuel tank, a clutch, and a main drive gear. Also, this canopy, painted as you see it, this is actually the Radical 30 canopy, which has a specific purpose for this kit, which we'll talk about later. And finally, this air deflector, which is a little bit unusual and it's custom made. As with any conversion, you need a donor model. This one requires the Trex 700 Nitro. Here's all the pieces you'll need from an existing kit. You'll notice there's no frame components in here. There's not even a canopy required to do this. HWC has based this conversion on the RC format motor, and I wanted to take a second to show you the difference between the RC motor and the PUH motor. This is the PUH from Zenoah. It's a traditional gas helicopter motor. It doesn't include a cooling system, and it is traditionally a magneto-based engine. Now, the RC motor looks like this. It's basically the same motor, just with a built-in cooling system. Both these motors make about the same amount of power. This particular one has an electronic ignition, although it's normally a magneto-based engine. I always build in sub-assemblies, and this build won't be any different. We're going to start off by taking the clutch bell and pinion gear supplied with the conversion. It also includes a start shaft and a start coupler. And you're going to assemble that into the standard Trex bearing block. Normal order, nothing special there. Then we're going to take the main gear that came in the conversion and install it on the auto rotation clutch from the donor model, along with the tail rotor drive gear. Finally, we're going to build a fuel tank, which is included with the kit. It's going to be plumbed as you would a normal gas helicopter setup. With the pre-assemblies done, we can go ahead and put the chassis together, which is a combination of both conversion and donor model parts. Start off by attaching the fuel tank retainer plates. They go on like so. And then you're going to stack on the standard Trex parts, things like the radio tray. Now, something else that's unusual is, since this has its own canopy, the front canopy mount is going to be different than you're used to, and so is the rear canopy mount. This, in fact, looks like an older version, which uses a grommet and a stud. But when you stack everything on, it's going to look pretty much like you'd expect your Trex 700 to look like. And then you can put the other frame on, bolt it together. You'll need the original shoulder bolts in the same locations. And you can also see this includes a brace for the main shaft. And on the fuel tank, it's vibration isolated so that engine vibrations affect the fuel less. Now we can move on to getting the engine installed on the bottom part of the chassis. You're going to put the engine mount on the front of the engine. We're going to bolt the engine to the bottom frame plate, install the landing gear as well as the landing gear mounts. The clutch is going to thread onto a fan hub, which attaches to the crankshaft, and the air deflector goes on top of the cylinder as shown. Here you can see that with the clutch on, the engine's mounted, as well as the landing gear and the landing gear mounts that go into the frame, and some frame spacers. If you look on the bottom, you can see the landing gear attaches normally, and the engine attaches to this bottom plate using the fan shroud bolts that are included with the motor itself. With the upper and lower chassis components completed, now it's time to combine them. So you're going to take the engine and lower plate assembly and combine that with the upper chassis that we built a few steps ago. These align on the clutch and the landing gear mount blocks in the slots in the frame, just like it would normally. And when you get it assembled, it looks like this. You're going to use bolts that are included in the conversion kit to complete this. Before we start with the control system, if you're using an electronic ignition, I wanted to show you a great place to mount it. This little area in the standard radio tray is perfect for the control box and lets you route the high voltage line away from everything like this. Regardless, you're still going to put servos in. That's the throttle servo, the rudder, the pitch, and the elevator servo. They go in standard positions. And on the other side, the aileron servo. All the hardware to mount these is included in the kit, as is this push rod for the throttle, since it'll be different from the standard one. The rudder push rod right out of the kit, as are the pitch and aileron and elevator push rods. However, these little servo wheels, these are included in the conversion. You can use them, or if you'd prefer to use the Align servo wheels, they fit perfectly as well. As far as wiring the rest of the electronics, you'll have your own way of doing this. This is just how I did it. There's plenty of room to get everything on there and get everything neat. Rotor head, you'll use whatever you had on your donor model. This is a standard Align fly barless head. No issues with putting that on. As we wrap up the model, I wanted to show you the air deflector I talked about earlier. You can see it mounts on top of the cylinder and deflects the hot cooling air out away from the canopy and the chassis. That's unique for this model. You can plumb the carburetor now, put the air filter on of your choice, and you'll most likely want a muffler so that your model's not too loud. Also, you can put the rotor blades on because the chassis part of the model is now finished. To get the canopy on, it's retained by this little retainer which mounts on the bottom of the canopy itself, and it interlocks with this tab in the front of the chassis. That pretty much wraps up the model. And that wraps up my overview of the new HWC T700 RC Conversion. It should be available at your local dealer shortly, or directly from Heli World. Now go fly some gas helicopters and be safe.